Welcome on in to Tossin the Pigskin, NFL Draft Edition. I'm your host, Nate Smith. The draft is a little less than 3 weeks away, folks. Today, we will break down the hottest defensive prospects, where they stand before the draft. Here we go. I'm joined alongside Joseph Caulo and Jacob Lev.
Absolutely.
Guys, we'll get right into it. We're going to talk all defense today, so we'll start with the big boys up front, the big dogs, the D linemen. Jacob, I'll start with you. Who's caught your eye as far as defensive linemen are concerned?
Well, I'm going to go Vita Vea here. He's a
nice pick.
big guy from Washington. He's like 6'5", like 340 pounds. He's going to eat up a lot of blocks, whoever drafts him. He had 43 tackles last season, 3.5 sacks, and 5.5 tackles for loss. That's pretty good numbers. He's not a sexy pick by any means.
340 pounds.
340 pounds. Yeah. It's not a sexy pick. You know, a team that makes that pick it's not going to sell a lot of jerseys, but you put him in the right situation, he will eat up a lot of double teams for good pass rushers. So
yeah, he reminds me a little bit of Haloti Nada in a way. I could see him going like mid-first round, so we'll see what ends up going on there. Joe, who's your pick for a D lineman to watch out for?
I think, first of all, in the NFL, you want to win a Super Bowl, you got to have defensive line. Look at the Eagles past year.
The best one in the league,
they were absolutely dominate. Even though Brady was able to dominate them, their defensive line makes a few plays, they win the game. But I think Vita Vea is a good pick. I'm going to go with Daron Payne, though, out of Alabama. And one of the reasons I like him coming out of Alabama, it's not just because you can say, oh, SEC's got more talent per se, but the style of teams he's kind of having to play against in college, there's a lot of run, a lot of play action. He kind of has similar duties that I think he would take on in the NFL. I think overall this is a weak defensive class. So Daron Payne, he'll probably be the third defensive lineman drafted, probably after Chubb and your guy Vita Vea. But that's going to be a nice pick for anybody kind of late into the first round.
He can also throw a football, too. I mean, we
I
saw him in the national championship.
I'd hope most football players can throw a football.
Well, I mean,
he threw a touchdown pass. He caught one. He caught
one.
He
You're
caught
right.
it.
Yes.
Love big boy touchdowns.
So, you know what? Maybe he'll give a run for his money with Calvin Ridley, huh?
Oh, wow. We'll see, man. We'll see. Yeah, for me, I'm going to go Daron Payne as well. I think the obvious pick here would be Chubb. I mean, everyone expects him to walk in and be a day one starter.
Chubb's great.
Yeah, I mean, he's the best D lineman here by far. I'm going to go with Payne as well. Just last season, he had 53 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. For me, it's a little concerning that he only had 1 tackle for loss. I know the Bama rotation's probably as deep as you get in the country, so he probably didn't get as many reps as other like grade A defensive linemen. But from what I was reading and what scouts are saying so far is that he just has this rare combination of size and athleticism that you don't really see. He's known right now as like a run stopper, but if he can get developed, NFL coaching staff with a quality organization, develop some pass rush moves, if he can get to 5 to 7 sacks a season, you might be looking at a future Pro Bowler there. So for me, it's Daron Payne as well.
I would love to see him go to the Chargers. I think that would be a great fit for him. I mean, they're kind of, with like Joey Bosa on that defensive line too, I really do think that they could form a very
you got Ingram
duo
over there too. They got quite the D line.
I forgot about Ingram, too, yeah.
All right, we'll shift it over to linebackers now. Joe, who's a linebacker you have your eye on for this draft?
There's been a lot of talk about defensive players other than the linebacker position, but this linebacker class is deep. I like Roquan Smith out of Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put on the tape in the big games last year, whether it be against an Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl or Bama when they played them in the national championship game, Roquan Smith dominates. He's fast. He's got a good ratio of size to speed. I really, really like Roquan Smith. And I'll cheat and go ahead and say 2 guys. Another guy, Josie Jewell out of Iowa, didn't get too much publicity in college because he played at Iowa.
Yeah.
But that is a guy that can play. He's got a lot of good. He's gone up against guys like Saquon Barkley, and he actually played very well against that kind of talent. So I like Josie Jewell as well.
I'm going to give a quick little shout out to Matt Miller's guy, Leighton Vander Esch out of Boise State. He's another guy that doesn't get enough love. He could be easily a top 10 pick if people just watch more film on him.
Right.
He's a big guy. He's 6'4", 240 pounds. He had 141 tackles last season. I know tackles is kind of like there's solo tackles and then
either
whatever.
way though,
but either way, 141 tackles is an eye-popping number.
When you play 12, 13 games, I mean, he's getting 10 tackles a game.
Yeah, exactly.
That
takes skill right there. He could also rush the passer. He had 4 sacks last season. I like his potential to maybe come into the NFL and he could put up 4 or 5 sacks a season. I think he could be a top 10 pick easily.
And one quick thing on him, I know Chris Peterson, the coach at University of Washington, who's had no problem putting guys into the pros from Washington, as we've seen, said that he was by far the hardest linebacker they've had to game plan against since he's been at Washington.
I believe it.
So,
that's hell of a
I
praise
mean,
right there.
that's if you get praise from a guy like that, I kind of buy that as well. I think Vander Esch will be good.
He's also a really cool guy, too. Like, I've listened to a couple podcasts with him on it, and he's just...
Unfortunately, that doesn't matter, Jacob. We want people to win games.
Hey, interviews really
No, it does.
matter at the
Locker
end
room
of the
culture is
day.
important. I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
it is.
I'm going to go Rashawn Evans. I'm sticking with Alabama, just moving back a line. 74 tackles. He had 6 sacks last year. He's a big dude, 6'3", 230. What I've read is he's just quick, he's fast. We've seen him on tape. Like, he just flies around. And the biggest thing for me that a lot of people don't realize is he played under Reuben Foster for a long time. And Reuben Foster was great at Alabama, now with the Niners. And it seems like Evans was able to adapt that toughness mentality, that alpha dog. Even though last year was only his true full season, like starting the whole time, I think learning under Reuben Foster for a couple years and just his athleticism, kind of like Daron Payne, like kind of a raw talent, and if he can get, correct technique, clean up some things about his game, but he has great instincts, he flies around, and the fact that he had 6 sacks to me is an eye-popping number for an inside linebacker.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to defensive backs. Jacob, who do you think makes the biggest impact next year on the team?
I am a true believer in you can't teach size, so I'm going to go Ronnie Harrison out of Alabama. He's 6'3". As a safety, having that
that's a big
size
boy.
is key. I mean, look at Cam Chancellor, look at Eric Berry. They're all big guys, and it definitely helps out that secondary. He had 2.5 sacks last season. As a safety, I think that's pretty good numbers. I mean,
A little Matthew-esque at LSU, I guess you could say.
yeah, I mean, hey. He also had 3 interceptions too. While we're at it. So like he could do a lot of everything. He can intercept the ball, he can rush the passer.
Right.
I think the Steelers would be a great fit for him. Steelers or the Patriots too. A team that has a very good team that has an up-and-coming defense. I think you plug him right in and he can make an immediate impact from day one. But again, it depends on where he lands.
Yeah. For me, I'm going Derwin James out of Florida State. 84 tackles last year, 2 picks. I just think he's the most versatile safety, and in my opinion, the best one. He can just do everything. He can come down, stop the run. He's rangy. He can cover downfield. So I think in pretty much any scheme, you see a lot of days in the NFL now, they move the safety down to the box to support the run. When you get to NFL, you have to be able to tackle, and he does that very well. So I think for me, it's Derwin James, just a great athlete. Joe, who do you like?
Just to piggyback off that, Derwin James, absolutely. He's a guy that, for whatever reason, I guess because he had some injury issues coming off of last year.
He missed a lot of last year.
He's kind of been a little bit off the radar, so to speak. I mean, he'll probably still be a first-round draft pick, but Derwin James is excellent. I think he comes in as a day-one impact player. I'm going to go a little bit off the board. Justin Reed at Stanford. I got a chance to see him play a couple games this year and paid attention to him. He's got great ball skills. You can tell he's kind of above his years, and he's leaving early out of Stanford, which isn't necessarily the most normal thing. A lot of Stanford guys stay 4 years. I think he's pro-ready. I think he had 4 or 5 picks this season. He had 4 or 5 picks the year before. So look at Justin Reed, not a first rounder, but that's a guy second, third round. If you draft him, you should be very happy as a fan of your team.
He seems like a Bill Belichick kind of pick.
Perhaps,
to me.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know, like something just pops out and screams Bill Belichick.
Maybe
to
he'll
me.
sneak in the late first round there. We'll have
Maybe.
to see. All right, guys, for the last segment, give me the defensive player who you think makes the biggest impact and has the best season. So basically, your defensive rookie of the year candidate. Jacob, we'll start with you.
I'm going to go Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think he's the first safety off the board. I think he could go as high as 5 to the Broncos, which is what I'm kind of hoping for. But he's a Swiss Army knife in the backfield. He could play safety. He could play cornerback. A lot of teams think he's better off at safety. But why not try him at both? I don't know. I mean, it depends on the team, I guess, that he goes to. But he's definitely going to be able to show his versatility, and I think that's going to show when it comes to the end of the season and they start voting for Rookie of the Year, the Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
I really do think he can make some noise in that category.
Joe, who's your pick?
I think with Defensive Rookie of the Year, typically you got to have a guy that puts up the numbers. I mean, it's hard for a defensive lineman to win it per se if he's just eating up blocks and kind of getting in the backfield. You got to have somebody with some flashy picks, i.e. Marshawn Lattimore last year had 5 interceptions. I'm gonna go with Josh Jackson from Iowa. He has the ability to get a lot of create a lot of turnovers. He had a lot of games last year where Iowa looked like maybe they were falling out of the game or they were losing by a lot, and he'd go get a pick six. So he kind of seems like he already has that knack to make a play when they really need one. I like Josh Jackson's potential. He won't be the first defensive back off the board. I think that'll probably be Minkah Fitzpatrick or Ronnie Harrison, but Josh Jackson will be a good guy as well.
I agree. He's a good pick. For me, I'm going Harold Landry out of Boston College. Just a great edge player. Another guy who just needs a little refinement on his technique. Goes late first round, I think, to a great organization who could really use an edge rusher. Just a freak athlete, 6'3", 250, can rush the passer, can tackle the running back, really get around the edge, cause problems up front. So my pick is Harold Landry. And with that, that'll just about wrap up our Defensive Prospects Draft Show. Thanks for joining us alongside Joseph Caulo and Jacob Lev.
Thank you very much.
I'm Nate Smith. Have a great weekend, guys.